Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and happy spooky season. This is if everything goes well, so fingers crossed, the last video you will be seeing of me in October. So happy spooky season. I hope everyone has just had such a wonderful October, and I hope Halloween, this comes out the day before Halloween, but I hope your Halloween goes great. For this weekly reading vlog, I am going to just be having a weekly reading vlog. It has been quite a few weeks since I've done one of those. I've really been having a lot of success with themed vlogs, themed TBRs, and having like set TBRs for my videos, but I just figured end of October, let's go back to my mood reading roots and just have an entire week of me trying to read all of the books that I was looking forward to reading in October. Obviously, that is just a goal that is impossible to achieve, but there were so many books that came out in September and October that I was really looking forward to reading, and I do have a lot of library holds that I need to pick up tomorrow that I'm really excited about. So I just figured, you know what, let's mood read. Let's try and see if we can get some 5 stars, read some awesome horror these last couple days of October. And I cannot believe that I'm already saying that, like I'm already saying the last couple of days of October, because I just feel like this month flies by. If you're a horror fan, if you like reading horror books, watching horror movies, it's really fun. Obviously, I do it all year long, but there's something a little special, a little fun about fall where kind of everyone gets in on the spooky season spirit. So yeah, I'm looking forward to a great week full of spooky season reads. I have so many books. I have the Libby curse going on right now where like all of my holds came in at the same time, even though I wasn't anticipating them all to come in. So I do have a lot of those. We're going to be listening to a lot of audiobooks, reading a lot of ebooks. I do have some physical books from the library that I could pick up as well. I know I wanted to get to Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning. I'm worried this is maybe too summary, but I don't want to wait until next year to read it, but it is very slasher summary, so I might get to this one this week. I also have a little bit of a shorter one, which is a surprise just based on my experience with Adam Nevill. This is The Vessel. I think this is possession horror, and it's really short, so this one I could maybe save for even, I don't know, if not this vlog, maybe I could just read it for Halloween, because it's short. It's not even 200 pages, so for me and my reading speed, that could definitely be doable. So I don't know. We have 0 TBR for this video, but I am just so excited to read some spooky books this week. So we do not need a long introduction in this vlog. I don't know what I'm reading. You don't know what I'm reading. You have a better idea based on the thumbnail of this video though, but I am going to go try and figure out what book I want to read. Let's figure it out together in the B-roll, and then I will check back in tomorrow with my first reading update. Hey friends, happy Wednesday. It is time for a reading update. I picked up Model Home by River Solomon last night. I'm about 30% of the way through the audiobook, and I'm really enjoying it so far. This was one that I've had on my radar for quite some time now. I had heard it was a haunted house story, and so far, 30% of the way in, I am enjoying it. I will say this is gonna be a heavier read. I can just tell. Now, I am such a huge fan of Mike Flanagan's work. He's one of my favorite directors and just horror creatives in general, but I see a lot. Books get compared to The Haunting of Hill House TV show, and never has a book hit me the same way that The Haunting of Hill House TV show has hit me. I mentioned TV show both times there because if you've seen it, you know it is a big departure from the Shirley Jackson work in a lot of ways, but it is just so stunning and breathtaking, and it still manages to capture the essence of the show and then just add so much layered commentary about grief. It's really unsettling. It's really beautiful and moving. I love it. It's one of my favorite pieces of horror fiction, And I understand why it's used as like a book recommendations jumping off point, but whenever I see just a book that's just a haunted house book get compared to that, I just think it's a wild comparison. Like Home Before Dark, I think that's one of Riley Sager's better books. I didn't exactly love it, but I think that's a crazy comparison to make just because I don't think it touches upon any of the same themes in any sort of meaningful way as The Haunting of Hill House TV show does. But this book, 30% of the way in, I feel like it's going in a similar direction, where we have a haunted house as a chilling haunted house with horrific things that are happening in it, but also as an allegory for grief and for complex family relationships and dynamics. And this, we are following multiple timelines. We're seeing the family as they live in the house all together as a family, and then in the present when the children are all grown up and they have to come together and deal with this house and deal with a tragedy that has happened at the house. So I'm loving it. It is very heavy. I want to binge it because the writing's so good. The writing is exquisite. The characterization is wonderful, but it's very dark. It's very weighty. And I know that that might sound a little bit strange because, you know, it's a horror book. Obviously, I'm not going in expecting like a light, fluffy contemporary romance, but just all of the things that it is having to deal with, it's a lot. So I am thinking that while I am enjoying that as an audiobook, I also want to pick up a physical book because I am in a reading mood today, and that is just not a book that I can binge through because of the subject matter. It has to deal with grief, and grief in a whole lot of ways, not just like the death of a loved one grief, but the grief of past relationships and changed sibling relationships, and knowing that you can never go back to the past and have the same relationships with people as you do now, because they change and grow as we change and grow and evolve as people. There's also a lot to deal with. The family is the only Black family in a gated community in Texas. So when we are in the past, there's that kind of level as well. And then our main character is gender fluid, and they throughout the novel present in a variety of different ways, and the ways in which people perceive our main character, including their parents, is hard. So just know there's a lot going on in that book. I am enjoying it, but it's a heavier read than I was expecting, and I don't know why I wasn't expecting, because River Solomon generally has just really hard-hitting, beautiful, devastating horror. But I think I've decided I'm just going to dive into the Adam Nevill today. I know I said I was going to wait for Halloween for this one, but I just need something short and creepy and, you know, maybe not as deep. I like Adam Nevill books, but I just have a feeling this one is going to be a lot more straightforward and fast-paced, so I think I am going to pick this one up tonight. So this one says, struggling with money, raising a child alone, and fleeing a volatile ex, Jess McMahon accepts a job caring for an elderly patient. Flo Gardner is a disturbed shut-in and invalid, but if Jess can hold this job down, she and her daughter Izzy can begin a new life. And it seems like the home's a little creepy, Flo's a little creepy, something demonic and creepy. I think this is also categorized as full core. Something strange is gonna happen with that living arrangement, so I do think I am going to switch to this one for the night because I just want to sit down and read a physical book. I love audiobooks, but you know, I have been listening to it today as I've been doing other things, been working out and doing chores and working and all of that. So I think just settling in at the end of the evening, getting cuddled up with my dogs and some blankets, put on an ambiance and pick up a spooky book, I think this is going to be a fun little time. So I'm excited, gonna go dive into this one. I will check back in tomorrow with another reading update. Hey friends, happy Friday. I did not end up updating yesterday because between working, going to the library, and then getting dinner, taking care of the dogs, all of that, I didn't have time to come on and do an update, but we're doing a Friday update. I got quite a lot of books from the library. Look at that stack. I'm quite excited about a lot of these. Just like Libby, I have noticed that my library holds really tend to come in all at once, so I am very much looking forward to these books in this stack. Figured I would just do a little bit of a library haul before getting in to the reading updates of the books that I've been reading this week. I do have one nonfiction, and that is The Last Witch of Langenberg, Murder in a German Village by Thomas Robichaud. And this one I was not anticipating on checking out, but it was at the display at the front of the library, and I have been slacking on nonfiction this year. Normally I make it a goal to read one nonfiction every year. This year, of course, I was like, I've had this as a goal for so many years, I don't need to put it as an official goal. I'll get it done. I have not gotten it done. I think I've read maybe 3 or 4 nonfictions this year, so I figured this could be a good one. I don't think I'm going to get to it in October, but maybe November, December, maybe nonfiction November will inspire me to pick up some more nonfiction, and I'm quite interested in this subject matter. So that's the nonfiction, the rest are all fiction. Now, I did used to work at this specific library, and I still have a friend in collections who will place holds for me if she sees a book that she thinks I will like. So I did get 2 bonus books, which I'm kind of excited about, so thank you, Lindsay, if you're watching, but neither of these books were on my radar, and I'm quite excited to check them out. The first one is Pay the Piper. This one is written by George A. Romero and Daniel Kraus. So this was apparently a draft that George A. Romero had been working on before his death. Daniel Kraus found it in 2019 and worked with Romero's estate to get this published. So I'm super intrigued. I have read something by Daniel Kraus and I didn't love it, but I did like the writing style. I've read things from Romero before and enjoyed them, so I am quite curious about this collab. I don't know if this is zombies or not. I know, you know, Romero is the zombie guy. Never mind, this is not about zombies, and now I'm just now realizing I did read The Living Dead. I didn't realize that Kraus was the collaborator on that, and I did quite enjoy most of that, so I'm intrigued. Looking forward to checking this one out. Swamp creature, sort of southern horror. And then the next book that my coworker placed on hold for me was In the Lonely Hours by Shannon Morgan. This one seems to be a gothic horror about a woman and her daughter. They inherit this beautiful estate. I love that setup, and this one actually seems like it does take place on Samhain, so this one could be a good pick for this week. I am always looking for horror books that take place during Halloween or during October. Obviously, as someone who reads horror year-round, or you know, even if you've ever read a horror book, obviously not all of them are like taking place in October around Halloween. For whatever reason, especially Halloween-centric horror is really hard to find, so this could be a gothic sort of tale that takes place in October. Never heard of this book before, but I'm excited to give it a shot. The other 5 are all fiction books that I placed on hold myself, and boy am I so excited to talk about this next one. I Was a Teenage Slasher by Stephen Graham Jones. I wanted to get to this in the summer, I just never got around to it, and I'm really excited to read this one. I have heard from people who I have the same kind of taste in horror with, really liked this one. I heard it's a really unique horror ride, so definitely intrigued. I also checked out Under the Surface by Diana Urban. This one is a YA horror. It's about a group of teens who go into the Paris catacombs and I believe get lost in there. That sounds like such a creepy premise. I love the movie As Above, So Below, and I just think the whole concept of the Paris catacombs is intensely like creepy. Not necessarily the catacombs themselves. I don't think that things like cemeteries are that creepy because they're just resting places, but just the fact of how dense and sprawling and huge the catacombs are, and a lot of people do get stuck and disappear in the catacombs because it's not a safe place and it's a very confusing place. There's obviously like an official entrance to the catacombs, and that one I think, you know, you have to pay to get in, and there's obviously lighting and you're not going to get lost there. But there are so many other entrances to the catacombs, and I just think it's so intensely scary, just like being lost underground. That's terrifying. So this could be a very scary read. We also have A Mask of Flies by Matthew Lyons. This one I'm intrigued about. I mean, I'm intrigued about all of these books, but this one, if I can remember, I think it's about a getaway driver, some sort of criminal, her and her accomplice, and then I think they take a cop hostage and they're in this like isolated setting and creepy paranormal things start happening. This is a pulse-pounding crime horror epic about a criminal on the run. Okay, so I'm very intrigued. This one's a lot bigger than I thought it would be. Chuck Wendig calls it a white-knuckled ride, and I tend to really like his horror, so I wonder, you know, if his horror blurbs really work for me. Never read anything from this author. I do believe this is a debut, but I am immensely excited to check this one out. We also have Ghost Mother by Kelly Dwyer. This is a gothic, I don't think it's a reimagining, but I think it's an ode to Bly Manor, Hill House, like the gothic classics. It's about a couple who are trying to conceive a child. They move into this creepy old house and creepy paranormal things start happening. This one has been calling my name for quite some time. I love haunted house horror. I generally tend to like horror that deals with themes of motherhood. I think it's effective horror for me, and I'm just very intrigued to see like all the Easter eggs and details about the works this is inspired by. I know I said Bly Manor, that's my Mike Flanagan brain talking, but the turn of the screw. I think we're gonna see some Easter eggs for that work in here. And then last but not least, we have not a horror, I think this is more like a fantasy historical fiction, but we have The Last Witch in Edinburgh by Marielle Thompson, and I like a good witch story. I like that this little haul is bookended by a witch story that is historical nonfiction and then a historical fantasy fiction. I'm intrigued. This one takes place in 1824 in an alternate Edinburgh. So definitely I will be picking up one of these library books as my next physical book moving into the weekend, but let's chat about the books that I've been reading this week. So I ended up finishing Model Home by River Solomon. I know I said I thought this might take me a while because of the heavy subject matter, but it got to a point where I was listening and I just could not keep myself away from this story. This was just so arresting and haunting and just gruesome and horrifying in so many ways, and just such a good book. I really enjoyed this one. The audiobook was really great. The narrator is Gabby Beans, and I thought they did a really great job of bringing this story to life. What I said before about this is a great comp title for Mike Flanagan's The Haunting of Hill House, absolutely that. At the end of The Haunting of Hill House, I had to sit in silence for a minute and just like comprehend everything and sit in my grief and horror and shock and just awe of like such a wonderful genre horror is. This book gave me those same exact feelings. I really enjoyed what Solomon did here, and I loved it. It's a very hard book. I know I talked before about how it is dealing with this Black family who moves into this gated community that is all white families in Texas, and the trauma that inherently comes from being othered in a community, in a space where you're supposed to feel like it's home. Along with this book also goes into gender identity and queerness. This is a very queer family, and there are a lot of queer main characters. Our main character, Esri, is gender fluid. They have several different gender expressions throughout their life, and then we also have their daughter who is also queer, and then some other queer characters as well. So this family has a lot going against them in such a patriarchal, conservative, white Christian upbringing surrounding them in this gated community. We also have a haunting in this house that is truly horrific to read about, and I don't think this is a spoiler, but it's definitely a trigger warning. I think when you pick this up, it becomes very clear very early on in the book that the book is going to deal with this, but it's a huge trigger for a lot of people, and I don't want people going into this. So skip forward 30 seconds if you don't want any trigger warnings, you don't want any, like if you consider them to be spoilers, skip ahead 30 seconds. I'm going to talk about it very briefly briefly, but trigger warnings, this has to deal with child SA, and it's not like explicit, it's not on the page, but it's very obvious that that is what is happening throughout this book, and the ways in which our main characters are dealing with such horrific abuse from their childhood, that is very prevalent. So be very careful going into this one if that is something that upsets you or is a trigger for yourself. That being said, this book handled it so well. There were so many moments, especially towards the end, where you just got this sinking feeling in your stomach. I think reading the audiobook was really effective for me because I was listening to it. I was doing other things as I normally do while I'm reading an audiobook, but like I just had to stand in shock and listen a couple of times to the ending of this audiobook about the things that we kind of think are going to happen, and then just like the way that they're unveiled and the way that our characters work through them. It's really gut-wrenching. So I definitely think that Mike Flanagan is my kind of suggestion for, there's obviously, well, there's some ghosty terror, kind of. I think Flanagan's work is more paranormal. There's an argument whether you want to shelf this one into paranormal fiction or not, depending on how far into spoilers you want to go, which I'm trying not to do in this vlog. But Mike Flanagan goes further with the paranormal, but I think Solomon and Flanagan both do an excellent job of utilizing horror, utilizing the haunted house trope and genre to explore some really horrific real life things. It's one of my favorite things about horror, in which horror can use these monsters and tropes and different paranormal entities as allegories or metaphors for real life horrors, and this book just did it so well. There was a couple of things about the ending, in particular the main character Elijah, her story. I'm a little bit nitpicky about some of the things and how they wrapped up and how much page time was given to them, but overall I did think this was an excellent story, and I'm so excited to check out more by River Solomon. Everything I've read from them I have really loved, and this one was no exception. Now moving on to The Vessel, I'm 70% of the way through this one. I am going to finish this tonight, okay? I was a little surprised I didn't finish it last night, but I just overall dedicated more time than I was expecting to reading Model Home, but I am almost done with this one and I'm really enjoying it so far. We have kind of a standard-ish premise. I hate saying that because it sounds a little negative, but y'all know what I mean, because we're following a main character named Jess. She is trying to get a job to make ends meet. She has recently separated from her abusive husband, and she has a young daughter that she's trying to raise on her own. She's trying to get into a better apartment, better school system, better situation for her and her daughter. She is a like home care nurse. She's not exactly a nurse, but she takes care of the elderly in their homes. She gets this new assignment, and from day one, things are not right. The house, there's something weird about the house. There's something weird about her patient, and I think it's important here because this can very quickly get into exploitative territory, especially around like dementia and those different topics. The exploitation of old people in horror, and in particular old people equals scary. Like I think that's used a lot for shock value, in particular with some recent horror movies. I don't love when the scare factor of old people in horror is that they're old, and that's not like scary. Obviously we all get old one day, and like that's a scary concept to think about our own mortality, but sometimes, this is a little bit of a side tangent, sometimes horror does it really well and works through topics. Sometimes it feels a little bit like old people, elderly exploitation. So this one, I think it's important to know that Jess is very experienced. She's not just seeing things that are just dementia symptoms and being freaked out and weirded out about like the otherness of the situation. She's used to taking care of dementia patients and taking care of the elderly. The things that she starts getting creeped out about are not just because our main character is old and saying some things that could be chalked up to our old character Flo having dementia, but things just are not right in the house. She keeps finding very creepy artifacts hidden among the house. She keeps having these recurrent dreams that just feel so scary, so vivid, and so real. And when she brings her daughter over on one of her night shifts, the very interesting dynamic between her daughter and the person that she is caring for, Flo, begins to unnerve her a little bit. Now this may be a situation where you're like, day one, you're getting bad vibes. why are you here? However, I think this is a good example of, you know, our main character's really trapped by her situation. Even though she's smart enough to realize that things are wrong, things are not what they appear to be, she's trapped. She needs this job, she needs this money, so that's why she stays. I think that's compelling because she's smart enough to realize that something's wrong. She's not a stupid main character running headlong into danger. She has reasons for why she's staying, and I think that's compelling. This is a very short, it's going at a very rapid pace, but enjoyable pace. So 70% of the way, I'm at about page 114, and this book, the story notes are on page 151. So it's gonna be less than 151 pages. So we don't have that long to wrap things up, and I am very intrigued to see where this one is going to go. But it is Friday night. Me and my partner are celebrating our weekly pizza night. I highly recommend, I've talked about this before, but just making small little rituals throughout the week just to make the everyday more exciting. Every single Friday we make a homemade pizza together, usually watch a movie. I think today we're gonna watch Ghost Files. We really like Shannon and Ryan, so we're either gonna watch that or a horror movie, eat some pizza, kick off the weekend. Tomorrow morning we're actually waking up bright and early to go early vote, so we're looking forward to that this weekend as well. And of course there's going to be a lot of reading, so I am going to go kick off my weekend, finish up the Vessel. I'll start a new book. I'll let y'all know in tomorrow's update what book I end up picking up, and I will talk to y'all tomorrow. Hey friends, happy weekend. So I did manage to finish The Vessel and overall had a good time with this one. I thought this one was paced like a movie, and when I got to the end of this book and I read the author's notes, that was actually intentional. It turns out that Nevill, after writing some books and then seeing some of his books be turned into movies, in that whole process he tried his hand out with screenwriting and just writing scripts for movies. And while this is not a screenplay, it's not like a movie script, it reads like a traditional novel, he did say he wanted to try his hand at writing a book that was paced like a movie. So that definitely explains why this one is on the shorter side. It explains why there's not a lot of character motivation. We never see the inside of the characters' minds because it is written like a movie. You can't get an internal monologue in a movie, so we don't have that. And then just the way some of the things were described, like we're following our main character, but then we as the reader see things that she doesn't see. I can definitely see how this is a very visual book. It feels like it was written to become a movie someday. So if you are someone who is just like maybe trying to dip your toes into reading horror fiction and you've only watched horror movies, this might be a good option for you because it's very fast paced. It reads like a movie and I had fun with it overall. I do have some qualms with kind of the way that this is marketed, but I don't want to say like what this is actually about because that kind of spoils the ending. So this very much, from the description on the back and then also just the title and the cover, it really suggests that this is going to be a possession story, and it's not. It's something else. It's another subgenre of horror, but to tell you that would give away the ending of this. So all I'll say is don't go into it expecting possession. Go into it just more expecting like a folk horror. That doesn't give it away. There's some other elements and aspects at play here, but go into this expecting more of like a folk horror time. So I did enjoy this. This is definitely like middle of the road Nevill for me. My favorites are still Last Days, and I did really like No One Gets Out Alive as well. So I think this is on par with The Ritual for me. I actually liked The Ritual movie better than the book just because of the endings. So I had a fun time with this, and it was definitely a great short read. So that was last night. I finished that book, ate some good pizza, watched some Ghost Files with my partner, and then this morning we woke up bright and early and went to go early vote. When this vlog comes out, there is still time to, I'm not quite sure early vote, but there's definitely still time to vote on election day. Highly recommend y'all get out there and vote. I'm talking to an American-based audience that is from my demographics. My audience is primarily American, so get out there and vote if you still need like some brushing up on the issues, especially for like down ballot votes and and personal issues to your county and your state, I would highly recommend ballotready.org as well as ballotpedia.org. Those are both nonprofits that help you get ready to vote in the way that you want to vote, and especially Ballotpedia. I really like that one because it breaks down issues, and the issues in a lot of states are written very confusingly on purpose. So if you are reading like this very big block of legalese text that feels just very intentionally confusing, that is intentional, and I like websites like Ballotpedia that'll break it down. It's not going to tell you to vote yes or no for issues, but it tells you if you vote yes, this is what it means. If you vote no, this is what it means. So I do think that those are very important nonprofit websites, and it helps break down the voting process and just inform more voters about important issues. So get out there, go vote, let's save democracy, and let's get back into reading. I am going to pick up an audiobook and a physical book. My audiobook is going to be American Rapture by CJ Leede. I am really looking forward to this one. I loved Mayfly, and I think I'm really going to get along with this one because it is about an apocalypse, but it also has to deal with kind of a religious twist. The blurb says that this is American Gods meets The Last of Us. A virus is spreading across America, transforming the infected and making them feral with lust. We are following Sophie, who is a good Catholic girl who must traverse the hellscape of the Midwest to try and find her family while the world around her burns. Along the way, she discovers there are far worse fates than dying a virgin. Just based on early reviews and the subject matter, I think I'm really going to like this one, so we'll definitely be picking this audiobook up today. And then for my physical book, I think I'm going to go with In the Lonely Hours by Shannon Morgan, and just because this one does take place in October and it just seems like a great seasonal read. It's raining outside. It's actually supposed to rain pretty much this whole entire day, so I feel that a very rainy October day is the perfect weekend to pick up this book that's set in October and seems to be a gothic ghost story. Blurbs for this one say that it is thrilling and melancholy, and it takes place in Scotland, and we're following our main character Edwina, who is shocked to learn a relative that she has never heard of before has bequeathed a castle and its land to her. What awaits Edie and her teenage daughter Neve is even more startling, for the castle is home to a multitude of ghosts. So I think this will be the perfect gothic ghosty time for this beautiful rainy day outside. So I'm going to go get to reading, and I will check back in a little bit later, either tonight or tomorrow morning, with another update. Me and my partner are thinking of going to like a Halloween small, it's kind of like, it's not really a farmer's market. There's not a lot of food vendors, but there are a lot of craft vendors. So it's like a craft market in our local area. They're doing like a Halloween one tonight. If it continues to rain, that probably won't be too much fun, but we might do that tonight, we might not. So we'll see what this weekend holds for us, but I'm excited to get to reading. I think I have some perfect end of October books picked out, so I'm gonna go get to reading those, and I will check back in later with another reading update. Hi friends, welcome to the last day of this weekly reading vlog. I did not update at all on Sunday. I was planning to on Sunday, and I was also planning on reading a whole lot more. Saturday was really fun. I did end up hanging out with a friend and catching up. We had not hung out in such a long time, so we didn't go to the market. We just hung out at her house, and that was so needed. But then on Sunday, the Sunday scaries hit. The Sunday scaries, the existential dread, the election dread, like all of that. I think maybe I was just like doom scrolling too much, and then just, you know, just situational anxiety about the election and all of that. So I just was so anxious on Sunday. Not a lot ended up getting done. I didn't read too much, just because sometimes when I'm really anxious, books and reading really help me, and other times when I'm anxious, they don't. So unfortunately for the vlog, and unfortunately for my reading goals, this is one of those times where I just could not concentrate too much on a book. But then Monday rolled around, I was feeling a little bit better. Obviously on Monday then I did have to work, but I did get some reading time in, enough to decide that I am actually going to DNF this one. This one was going to be pretty perfect. I was really excited to read a book that did take place, feature Samhain, or the 31st of October, and I was looking forward to this. However, I didn't love it. I got to about chapter 5 and I just could not stand our main character's like internal dialogue and the way that she talked with her daughter, and I'm sure that is going to be something that is addressed in the book, but just the dialogue was just not great. I wasn't loving it, and I just really was not vibing with this book, and I just knew this definitely wasn't going to be a 5, 4, or potentially even 3-star book for me, so I did not want to read it during Halloween. So I am going to DNF this one. Unfortunately, it just was not vibing with me, and I don't want to suffer through a book I'm not loving during Halloween, because that's coming up. So we are DNFing this one, but the other book that I picked up, I'm loving it. I am loving it, and that is why this is not like the final clip. We're gonna have one more update clip, because I am currently 50% of the way through American Rapture by CJ Leede, and I'm loving this one. I'm loving this one. It's giving me 5-star feeling, and I want to finish it today, wrap it up, give my final thoughts, and conclude this vlog, but I am just loving this one so much. We are following our main character, Sophie, as she is traversing the Midwest to reconnect and find her brother after an apocalypse hits the United States involving a very mysterious virus that is it's kind of giving zombies, but it also makes the people who get infected with it very sexually active. So kind of think like sexually active zombies. That is how the virus is spread in this one. If you get infected or ingest or get exposed to any bodily fluids, that is how this is passed. So Sophie is at the very beginning of this novel, right before this apocalypse hits. She is trying her very best, her very hardest to be the perfect Catholic girl that her parents want her to be, especially because her brother is not the perfect Catholic child. So she feels a lot of guilt for his situation and his relationship with their parents, and she also is really trying to make up for that and just reconcile the way she feels inside, and just reconcile trying to be perfect, which is obviously an unattainable goal. This very much blends a coming of age story with apocalyptic horror, as Sophie is trying to figure herself out. She has just now gotten like a crush for the first time right before everything goes haywire, and she is kind of exploring, because there's so much Catholic guilt and, you know, kind of divine punishment, and you are really encouraged not to have any feelings of romantic attraction, even though that's not something you can control. So this poor girl, like throughout this book, she keeps worrying that she is infected with this virus because she'll find a boy cute. And so she has a lot of unpacking to do. She's quickly learning that she was so isolated, so sheltered from the world, and her parents kept a lot from her. So she is thrust into a world that she is unfamiliar with, even in the best of times, and she now has to navigate it by herself and try and figure out how to survive. This has a lot to deal with Catholicism and exploring yourself, and maybe moving away from religion and exploring the various ways in which Catholicism, in particular for this book, but Christianity and the patriarchy of it all, and the way that very natural human feelings are demonized, and how much that can destroy a young person's psyche. So this is very hard-hitting at times, definitely like religious horror, religious exploration horror. We also have some body horror. We have some pretty gruesome body horror, as this is of course course, a basically zombie apocalypse, for lack of a better word. So I'm really loving this one. It's funny at times, it's sweet at times, it's got those body horror gore elements, and I'm really loving it. So my goal today is to buckle down and finish this one, and I think it's gonna be my favorite book of October so far, and I definitely think that if the last 50%, I gotta knock on wood or something, because I don't want to jinx myself, but this could make it on my top 10 books of the year. That's how much I'm loving it. So that is today's goal. I am going to go get to reading, and I will check back in later on today with hopefully a glowing review and a final update for this vlog. So I will talk to y'all later. Okay, so it is actually the next day. I did end up finishing American Rapture last night. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I was, full disclosure, sobbing throughout the last few chapters. So after I finished that, I just wanted a little bit of time to sit with my thoughts and maybe have a more coherent review other than me just getting on here, tears still glistening down my cheeks, just sobbing about it because I really loved it. It's very rare for me to actually cry at a book. There are a number of books that like I'll get teary-eyed, I'll feel like a little bit of heat in my eyes, but like rarely do tears fall down my face. I was sobbing at this one. From the chapter called Inferno all the way to the end, I just was on and off crying. This one just really hit for me. Obviously 5 stars. It's going to make it onto my favorite books of the year. American Rapture is an absolutely beautiful example of a horror novel. It's coming of age meets apocalypse, and I would say, you know, even if those aren't tropes or themes that you typically like in a story, you may want to give this a try anyway, because I do not generally love like zombie apocalypse, which is like a large subgenre in the horror apocalypse fiction sphere, and I don't tend to like horror apocalypse stories. I also don't like road trip stories, but this one really worked well for me. I think that a lot of people are going to think that this one starts out a little bit slowly. We don't start on page 1 with this apocalypse happening. We get a lot about Sophie and her background and her upbringing, and that is so essential and so important to the story. I did see a review. I didn't read too much into other reviews. I was just logging in my own review on Storygraph, but I saw a review that said this could have been a typical zombie apocalypse story and nothing would have changed, and I could not disagree more. The fact that this is a lust-driven story and our main character is a Catholic girl who has been so repressed her whole life makes everything. It's everything about this story. This would not be the same if it weren't for those aspects. This is definitely not just a run-of-the-mill zombie story. Sure, there are some things that if you've consumed a lot of zombie or apocalypse media fiction, there are going to be some tropes, right? We have a group of ragtag survivors. They probably would not have been friends in the world before, but they're all grouped together for a common purpose. We have people being the real evil, and simultaneously you're seeing the very best and the very worst in people when it comes to this horrific situation. So I understand, while yes, it could have been, maybe you could have tried to write this as a typical zombie horror, but the fact that it is lust-based and the fact that Sophie, this poor girl, throughout the story, she'll see someone and she'll be like, oh, he's cute, and then she'll be like, oh, I'm going to hell for this, I'm infected, I'm a demon, I should be locked up and put away from everyone, when that's clearly not what the infected like are doing. They get infected by lust and it takes them over, much like in the vein of The Last of Us. They can still kind of, some of them can like talk, but they can walk and move, but they are just driven by something in their brain. It's like a syphilis sort of mutation, but obviously a young woman having a crush on someone, that is not being infected, but because Sophie is so indoctrinated by her upbringing to teach that anything lustful or anything of that nature is sinful, that's a huge struggle she has to go through, and meeting other people and realizing just how isolated that she has been and just how indoctrinated she has been her whole life. There were a lot of beautiful discussions in here. Sophie's journey is not only external as she's journeying throughout the countryside, but it's internal as well, and I loved this one. Obviously, when reading a book, you do not need to completely identify with the main character. That's one of the beauties of reading, is that you get to see from so many other different perspectives that aren't your own. But coming from someone who used to be Catholic, who was raised Catholic and is not Catholic anymore, a lot of the conversations in here were just so important. I wish that I had them as a younger person, and there's a character in here named Cleo. I'm not going to get into spoilers, but I do wish that I had someone like that as a child, because it would have, and not even a child, but like as a young adult, a high schooler, it would have been really beneficial to have. But if you have any sort of religious trauma, or maybe like difficulties, or just you were religious and you're not anymore, I still think you can read this. I think this like tackles those subjects in an ultimately very cathartic way. Just going into this one, I think obviously by the cover and synopsis you'll know that this is dealing with those questions of religious extremism and indoctrination, but just be on the lookout for that. Also, the way in which the religious extreme happens in this plague, because one of the main hallmarks of the apocalypse genre is the horrors are not just the apocalypse, but the horrors are actually coming from man and your fellow man, and the way people treat each other and take advantage of each other, and just the way that an extreme group of religious fundamentalists group together and cause havoc in this book. It's so accurate. I'm sorry, it's accurate. This book I think does a good job. There are examples of people who are religious in this book. There are examples of whole entire churches in this book that are doing the right thing, that are actually doing the word of God or the benevolent thing and loving one's neighbor. There are also factions in here that are not doing that and are doing a whole lot of evil. So that's really disturbing to read as someone who used to work in a library and does not anymore for a number of reasons, but especially one of the huge reasons is because our library was being attacked by Moms for Liberty, and more specifically the county Republican group, and the things that they were threatening to individual librarians, library workers, and just the library themselves. I'm sorry, like I see how people who claim to be godly could do something like the groups that are in this book in times where they believe it's a rapture and they believe that this is not an illness but it's God's punishment. So it's a lot. It's a lot, and I know religion is a tricky subject for a lot of people for a variety of reasons. Again, I'd like to express this book isn't just bashing religion as a whole. It's deconstructing methods of control, and it's examining the ways in which people do actually follow like godly teachings in places of crisis. There's the example, the church is Holy Hill. There's examples of people who are religious and do great things. So if you are still religious, that is great. This book is not like bashing that. It's calling out extremism and control and the ways that that really impacts one's psyche. So it's just that this book was beautiful. I could talk about it for hours, and I really loved it. This really cements CJ Leede as an auto read author for me. I liked Mayfly. I thought it was a whole lot of fun, but I just thought that this one was absolutely beautiful. Now, I will say there's just one more thing I want to cover, because there is a dog in this book, and I know, does the dog die is a huge question for a lot of people, so I'm briefly going to flash the answer up on this screen. So if you are not interested, if you think that's a spoiler, skip ahead 30 seconds, but I know a lot of people, like it's a deal breaker for them. For a book. So I'm going to go ahead, flash it on the screen. People who are interested, skip ahead 30 seconds right now. Does the dog die? Okay, everyone can come back. I totally get that one, and I do try and do at least that spoiler for people because I know that that's a huge one. I have 2 dogs myself. If you watch my vlogs, even this vlog, they're a constant presence in my life. It's not a deal breaker for me, but for other people it is. So I always try when there's a dog heavily featured in a horror book to give that disclaimer to people. So I think that's all I wanted to cover. Halloween is tomorrow. I'm still gonna try and get this vlog out on Wednesday. It's Wednesday when I'm filming this, but I think I can still do it. But Halloween's tomorrow. I hope everyone has just the absolute best day. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Leave a comment down below. Let me know, what are you reading for Halloween this year? Subscribe to my channel for all of the bookish, cozy gaming, and horror content. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!